I trust that you are well and that you had an amazing evening so far. All right, so we are doing our grade 7 lesson on verbs, so our grade 7 English lesson on verbs. And before we officially start with our lesson, can you go to a plus students.ca. All right, so once you've gone to a plus students.ca, then you're going to log in with your username as well as your password. Once we've logged in with our username as well as our password, we're going to select the subject of language arts. And then we go to grade 7. All right, so once we are in the grade, which is grade 7, we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of verbs. All right, so our chapter for tonight is verbs, and we are going to cover quite a few lessons under the chapter verbs, starting with irregular past tense verbs, or like a review on that. And then we are going to go on to simple past, present, as well as future tense, form the progressive verb tenses, form the perfect verb tenses, and then if we do have time, then we will do identify transitive and intransitive verbs. All right, so as we're about to start our lesson, right? So we're going to start with irregular past tense verbs, right? All right, so of course we have regular and we have irregular past tense, right? So most verbs are regular, and we also have some verbs that are irregular, right? So most verbs are regular in the past tense, right? This means that you follow a rule, like whenever you for example, like if it's a regular verb that shows past, and then we add an ed, or we add a d to the verb to get the past tense form of the verb, right? So with regular verbs, we basically just follow the rule of either adding an ed or adding d to the past tense verbs to form the specific verb, right? And then we have some verbs that are irregular, right? And irregular verbs within the past tense, right? This means that you do not follow rules, right? So which means that we do not have rules that says that we need to either fill in ed, or we need to fill in d, or add an s, right? With irregular past tense verbs, you must remember that the past tense form of the verb, meaning did, is the irregular past tense form of do, right? So I do my homework now, but in the past, I did my homework, right? Which means that there was no rule that followed where it said that we needed to add ed or d, right? So which means that it changed from do to did, right? So that is but one of the examples of irregular and regular verbs. All right, so if we follow, right? So if we look at the picture that we have in front of us, right, of regular and irregular verbs. Regular verbs on the one side, on the left hand side, and then we have irregular verbs on the other side. So this is just a few examples of regular and irregular verbs, right? So starting with regular verbs, we see that regular verbs form their past and past participle forms by adding either ed or we add a d, right? So that is the rule that we have to follow with regular verbs. And a few examples of regular verbs are I watched TV last night. So watched being, we added an ed, right, to show the past, right, or the form of past or to form the past of the verb, right? So we added an ed that shows that that is within the past tense, right? So I watch is present. I watch TV now is present. But if we want to mention it within the past tense or past participle, and then we can say watched TV last night. So we added an ed, right, to show that that form of verb is in the past. I played baseball this morning. I played baseball this morning, right? Which means that now I play baseball, right? So play is now. I'm going to underline the present. So play is now. But played, where we added an ed, shows the past tense, right? So as you can see, irregular verbs, it's basically where just an ed is added to our verb, right? And then it shows that the verb is past tense. We studied hard for the test. Studied. So in this case, studied, right? So it's studied, we study is now, right? So in this case, studied, we basically dropped the y and then we added the ied, right? So you don't put the y when you want to write it in the past tense. I enjoyed the new film. I enjoyed the new film. So enjoy being our present, but enjoyed where we added an ed, right? It shows the past tense, right? My brother climbed the cliff wall. My brother climbed the cliff wall, right? So if we were to make mention of it being now, then we would say climbed being now in the present. But if we make mention of the past, then we say climbed by adding our ed, right? So the rule by adding ed to show that it is within the past tense. The lamp jumped over the fence. The lamp jumped over the fence. So jump being now, but jumped where we add an ed, which shows or indicates that it is within the past tense. And then they cooked an amazing meal, right? So cook being now, but cooked where we add an ed, then it shows the past tense, right? So cooked. So with regular verbs, there's basically a rule that we follow where we either add ed to our present verb to make it past, or we add a d, right? Now we have irregular verbs, right? So with regular verbs, just the rule of ed or d, right? To show past tense. But then we have irregular verbs on the other hand, right? And irregular verbs do not follow the normal patterns for tense and past participle, meaning that they do not have a specific rule, pardon, that mentions that you either need to add an ed or you need to add a d or you need to add an s, for example, right? So with irregular verb, it's as if the word changes, or um either the vowels change within the word, um or the whole structure of the word changes, but it's like the word like kind of changes, right? So like I say, there's no rule that we need to follow, but in this case we need to also know what the present verb is in order for us to identify the past, right? So what I'll do is I will try and write the present verbs next to each sentence. All right, so if we look at the first word, the first sentence, we ate the pizza quickly. So ate, right, being the irregular verb, right, that shows past tense. So ate, the present the present tense verb is eat. So eat being the present, but ate being the past verb. So eat being the present verb, ate being the past verb. So we eat pizza now, but we ate pizza quickly, right? I drank some cool drink, right? So I drank something that you did already. I drank some cool drink, right? So drank, the present of drank is drink, right? So which means that it's basically only the vowel or the one word within that word that changed, right? So drank is the verb, the irregular verb that shows what you did in the past, but the present word is drink. They slept in the tree house. Slept in the tree house. Slept being the irregular verb that makes mention of the past, right? Slept. And slept is the past tense of the word sleep. All right. She got a watch at Christmas. She got a watch at Christmas, right? So got is the past tense of the word get, because get shows now and got shows the past, right? Something that you got already. He swam in the ocean, right? Swam, something that he did already, right? But if we were to make mention of something that he does now, then we will say swim, right? So he swims now, which is in the present, but in the past, he swam in the ocean. So swam, which is the past tense of swim, got, which is the past of get, slept, which is the past of sleep, drank, which is the past of drink, and ate, which is the past of eat, right? The child dug a hole. So the child dug a hole, right? So that is the past tense of dig. Dig being now something that the child is doing. However, dug means that it either happened this morning, it happened earlier on, it happened yesterday, last week, or so on. The dog hid the bone in the garden. So the dog hid the bone in the garden, right? So hid being the past of hide, right? So hide being the present tense, but hid is the past tense, right? See, if you look at the difference between regular verbs that forms the past and past participles, and you look at the irregular verbs, then we can really see that there is quite a difference, right? Because with regular verbs, we basically follow rules. Like it's like we are following a rule that says that we either need to add a D or an ED to our, let's say basically our normal verb, right? So what if our action is we add an ed or we add a d to that verb to change the tense of the verb, right? To show now that it is in the past tense. However, with irregular verbs, right? Irregular verbs do not follow the normal patterns for tense or for past participles, right? And we made an example of a few of the verbs. For example, we ate the pizza quickly, right? So ate is the past of eat, right? And remember, like I said, it's either some of the wording has changed or vowels has changed or something was added, something was removed, right? But sometimes we just need to know what the specific word is in order for us to identify it. All right, so we're going back to our tutorial, right? All right, so here it says complete the sentence in the verb. Complete the sentence with the verb in the past tense. So complete the sentence with the verb in the past tense. Although the candidate's campaign would be costly and his odds of winning seem slim, he what re-election nonetheless, right? So we need to choose the correct word by completing the sentence. So we can say that he sought to, oopsie, where is he sought, right? We are going to add the word sought. Sought is the past of to seek, right? So sought is the past of to seek. Because here it says that um he basically, it's like he's seeking to re-elect nonetheless, right? So as much as it's costly, right, and the odds of him winning is slim, but he is basically seeking to re-elect nonetheless. So to seek is the irregular verb, right? And the past tense of that irregular verb to seek is sought, right? And there we have our correct word, which is sought. And the fact that the word changed from to seek to sought, to sought, it really shows that it is an irregular verb, because you said an irregular verb does not follow specific rules. All right, so we need to change the word to teach, right? So we're going to change the word to past tense, to teach, to past. I to teach my brother how to make a bird cage, right? So we need to make mention of the word in the past, right? So to teach. So if you teach someone, right? To teach someone, it is to, it's like you taught someone. So to teach is you taught someone. Taught. And remember there's a difference between taught and thought. So do not get that incorrect, right? So taught is to teach, and thought is to think, right? So taught and thought. All right. The mechanic started the car, let it run for a while, and then someone like kneel down to see if any fluids was leaking. So to kneel, if we were to kneel down, right? So if we were to kneel down, what is the past of to kneel? So the past of to kneel is knelt, right? So to kneel being the irregular form, and knelt is how it changed. So you can see like there's like such a vast difference within that two words. So which means that the mechanic started the car, let it run for a while, and then knelt down to see if any fluids was leaking. All right, so that is basically just irregular past tense verbs that we have identified so far within the sentences, right? And with irregular past tense, we say that there is no rules that you follow, right? Instead, you must just remember the past tense form of verb. And I said that it's either the wording changes, either the vowel changes, or something changes within that word. Pardon. Whereas with regular past tense, right, we need to follow rules such as by adding ed to a normal verb or adding a d to a normal verb in order to change the tense of that verb. All right, so now we're going to begin the test on irregular past tense review. The blanket Pamela is it that she bought or buy should keep her warm. So the blanket Pamela bought or buy should keep her warm. So we need to choose the correct form of verb to show the tense has changed. So which means that we need to identify what the correct form of verb is, right? Especially since we are looking at the past tense. So Pamela, so the blanket Pamela is what she bought should keep her warm or what she buy. So we need to choose the correct form of irregular past tense verb within that sentence between bought or bought or buy, sorry. All right, so if we were to choose the correct past tense irregular verb, then we will say the blanket that Pamela bought, right? So bought is the past tense of buy. All right, the next one. It took determination and hard work, but Dwayne finally is it repay or repaid his debt and started saving money for a house. You need to choose between repay or repaid, the past tense. All right. So the past tense of repay is repaid, right? So he repaid his debt and started saving for the house. All right. The ostrich is it thrust or thrusts its neck out as it turns to see what sort of creature had just entered the pen. So we need to choose the correct verb in the past tense. So the ostrich is it he thrust or he thrusts his its neck out as it turned to see what sort of creature had just entered the pen. All right, let's choose thrusts, right? So we chose the word thrusts, right? And thrusts is basically just the normal verb, right? To thrust is basically the normal verb, which is irregular, and the past tense of to thrust is just thrust. It is not thrusts, right? So what sometimes whenever we have a whenever you get a like a test question incorrect, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it is incorrect. It's just that sometimes what happens is the questions are quite tricky. And especially if you look at the word thrust and thrusts, right? It is similar, right? But in this case, what you must do is if you find or if you get a question incorrect, right, then you can go to where the correct answer is, right? Copy the link, send it to us, and then you will be able to get 100 bonus points. So whenever you get a question incorrect, right, then try and find the correct answer for us, copy that link, send it back to us, and you will be able to get 100 bonus points. All right. Okay, so now if we go on to the next one, so that is the irregular past tense, right? And remember with irregular um past tense, we say that there is no rules at all, right? The wording can even change. Okay, so we're going on to the next lesson, which is simple past, present, and future tense, right? Okay, let's start with present tense, right? Present tense verbs. So present tense verbs tell you about something that is true or that is happening now, right? It is happening in the present. It is happening now, right? It's the action that is taking place now. So the present tense forms of verb must agree with the subject in number, right? For example, singular subjects go with singular verbs. To form most singular present tense verbs, we either add an S. For verbs that end in sh, S, X, and Z, we add an ES. But for verbs that end in consonants with a Y, we change the Y to I and we add an ES. And we made an example earlier on about study. We made an example of study, right? Which means that if the consonant ends in Y, we change the Y to an I. So in this case, we change the Y to an I and we add an ES to show the past. All right, and here are a few examples. Snow falls outside my windows, right? So basically just an S was added to the singular subject with a singular verb. Snow falls outside my window. The next one is Dylan washes the dishes. So not Dylan wash the dishes, Dylan washes the dishes by adding an es because wash is the verb that ends in sh, which is sh. Susan carries the boxes to her room. So the normal verb of carries is carry, right? Carry. And we say that if your verb ends in a consonant Y, then we change the Y, then we change the Y to an I, and we add the ES, right? Wash is the normal verb. If it ends in SH, we add an ES to show the verb tense, right? All right. That is present tense verbs and also singular subjects, right? And we said singular subjects goes with singular verbs. All right, so now we have plural subjects, right? And plural means more, right? We're referring to more than one, right? So plural subjects, I and you go with plural verbs, which have no ending. For example, ice cubes, right? Which refers to more than one ice cube. So ice cubes float in the water. So we don't say floats in the water. No, it's just ice cubes float in the water. You look nice today. Not you looks nice, you look nice today. So plural subjects, which is either I or you, go with plural verbs, right? Which have no ending. Two verbs, right? Two verbs are irregular in the past tense, such as to be and to have. So you must remember that their forms. So you need to remember their forms. It's either to be or to have, right? So to be is, for example, is, and to have is has, right? Then we have examples. The soup is too hot, right? Right? So it's almost like saying it to be hot, but we don't say to be hot. We just say the soup is hot. Same with Aaron has long hair. So to have long hair means that Aaron has long hair, right? So this means that you need to remember their forms. For example, to be, which is, and to have, which is has, right? All right. All right, so that is the present tense verbs. So now if we go on to the future tense verbs, right? Up here. So future tense verbs will tell you about something that is going to happen, meaning it must still happen, right? Because the future must happen, right? It must still happen. It hasn't happened yet, right? So the future tense verbs, it tells you about something that is going to happen, right? So whenever we mention future tense, pardon, and then we add will to form the future tense of all verbs. So future tense verbs tell you about something that is going to happen, and we add will to form the future tense of all the verbs. For example, the boys will finish later, meaning that they are still going to do it, all right? But later on. Tanya will speak at the conference. The conference can either be tomorrow, it can be next week, and Tanya will speak, meaning that she hasn't spoken yet. She hasn't given her whatever her speech is, but she will speak. She still has to. It's going to still happen, right? So will speak, right? So the word will is there to form the tense of the verbs. So if we look at an example, not an example, but if we look at the sentence over here, we need to complete the sentence with the future tense form of verb, right? And remember, we said we add will in front of the verb, right? The soccer team, right? So we need to, the word forfeit. So the word forfeit. So the soccer team forfeit its last game if fewer than 9 players turn up, right? Turn up, meaning that something is going to happen, right? Which means that we will say that the soccer team will forfeit. So they will forfeit the last game if fewer than 9 players turn up, right? So will forfeit, meaning that if they don't have 9 players by the time that they need to play their game, then then they will basically lose the last match that they had. All right, so that is the future tense, right? If we look at the example, not an example, but a question of the present tense, right? It says complete the sentence with the present tense form of verb. In the United States, the average child, right? So the average child means we're referring to one child. So if we're referring to one child, it means that we are referring to a singular subject, right? So does a single child watch TV, or a single child watches TV? So watch or watches. right? So we said singular subjects go with singular verbs, right? And to form singular present tense verbs, we either need to add an S. And for verbs that end in SH, CH, SX, and Z, we add an ES, which means that in this case, watch, it ends in CH, right? Which means that we are going to, our correct one is watches television nearly 1,500 minutes each minute. So watches, right? It refers to a singular subject that goes with a singular verb. All right, future tense verbs, right? Here we mentioned future tense verbs also. If we look at future tense verbs again, right? The sentence. The next time the next time Haley's comet, right? Is it approach? We need to look at the word approach. Earth is in 2061. So the next time Halley's comet approach Earth is in 2061. But in this case, it is the future tense verb, right? And remember that we said that the future tense verb, it tells you about something that is going to happen. So something that is going to happen, that must still happen, we need to add will to that word to form the future tense verbs, right? Which means that we will then say the next time Halley's comet will approach Earth is in 2061. So will approach, it shows us the future tense form. All right, so now we're going on to our test on simple, past, present, and future tense. Okay, we need to complete the sentence with the present tense form of the verb. So present tense, right? And remember with present tense, keeping in mind if it is singular or if it's plural, right? Did you know that a water molecule consists of two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom? Did you know that a water molecule of two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom? So is it consists or consist of? We need to choose the correct form of word that shows the present tense form of the verb. All right, so if we choose the present tense verb, let's go with consists, right? Because consist shows singular, right? So molecule is one molecule. We need to complete the sentence with the future tense form of verb, right? Future tense. The forecast is calling for colder temperatures later this afternoon. So the precipitation is a turn to snow, or so the precipitation will turn to snow. We need to choose the correct form of verb for the correct form of tense. And remember, we said with future tense, we add will, right? So it will turn to snow because it must still happen, right? It hasn't happened yet. Tomorrow, Mr. Davis will meet, this is now the future tense form of verb, will meet his publisher to discuss the release of an upcoming novel. Or tomorrow, Mr. Davis meet with his publisher to discuss the release of an upcoming novel. We need to choose between will meet or meet to complete the sentence with the future tense form of verb. And once again, with future tense forms of verbs, it shows something that must still happen or going to happen, which means that we need to add will. So we will say will meet with his publisher, right? All right, so that is for simple past, present, and future tense, right? So now we're going to form the progressive verb tenses, right? Progressive verb tenses. And we said that not we said, but a progressive verb tense or progressive tense, it describes ongoing action, right? So it's not just an action that is taking place like watch or run or ran or something, right? Or sought. Progressive tense, it describes ongoing action. So ongoing action, it tells about something that is, was, or will be happening, right? So to form the progressive tenses, we need to use a form of helping verb, which is to be, right, with the main verb. And then we end, our verb also ends in I, in G, right? So for example, watch, watching, right? And that ends in I, in G. The present progressive tense, it tells about something that is happening right now. It uses a present tense form of helping verb to be, where we can also say is, am, or are, right? So Julie, which refers to one, is playing basketball right now, right? If we are referring to more than one person, if we were to say Julie and Jane, then we say they are, not is, are playing basketball right now, right? Or if you're just referring to yourself, then you can say I am playing basketball right now. So that is where or how we add the progressive tense, which is, am, or are, right? Then we have the past progressive tense, which tells about something that is happening in the past, right? Where we either use words like was or were. Was referring to one person or thing, and were referring to more than one person or thing that's doing an action, right? So, for example, Seth was talking to Mrs. Jones, right? So, Seth alone, he's one person, right? And he was talking to Mrs. Jones. But if we say the boys, which refer to more than one, then we say the boys were talking to Mrs. Jones, right? Because now we're referring to both boys or more than two boys or more than one boy, for example. All right, then we also have the future progressive tense. And the future progressive tense, it tells about something that will be happening in the future. And remember when we said that whenever you use either future tense, we add the word will, right, to it. But in this case, which is the future progressive tense, it uses the future tense form of helping verb, which is to be, which means that we added the will. So instead of just adding will and the verb, we will say will be and the verb ending in I, in G. For example, Karen will be visiting next June, right? And as you can see, the verbs within either progressive tense, which is the present progressive tense, past progressive tense, or future progressive tense, the verb it ends in ing, right? And we basically need a helping verb also, right? Within that sentence, which is either to be, which is, am, are within the present progressive tense, was or were within the past progressive tense, or will be, which shows the future progressive tense. All right, so that is basically the end of our lesson on verbs, right? And we covered irregular past tense, right? Where we said that it's as if the whole verb changes. It does not follow a set of rules by either adding ed or d to our specific verb or our main verb. And then we also have simple past, present, and future tense, right? We have simple past tense. We either say that there is simple present tense where we say that we either have singular verbs, right, as well as plural verbs, and we either need to know when to add is or not add it at all. And then we have progressive verb tense, which shows ongoing action, right? Whether in the present, the future, or in the past. All right, so grade 7, that is the end of our lesson on verbs. Thank you very much for joining the lesson. Till next time, have an amazing evening. Goodbye.